All right, if you have your Bibles, please turn to 2 Kings chapter 19, verses 14 through 19. Now, tonight I'm going to be talking about Hezekiah. Now, I'm sure many of you know about Hezekiah. He was a good king. He was the 13th successor from the line of David, and he was king of Judah. He was also in lineage to Jesus. And I'll be talking about Hezekiah and one of his more notable stories where he falls very ill and God mercifully gives him 15 extra years of life. And so during this reign, Hezekiah was he's in a bad problem. He had the Assyrians right outside their doorstep. Sennacherib was right there. He was about to attack, and he didn't know what to do. Hezekiah did not know what to do. And so in chapter 19, verses 14 through 19 says, "And Hezekiah received the letter of the hand of the messengers and read it. And Hezekiah went up into the house of the Lord and spread it before the Lord. And Hezekiah prayed before the Lord and said, O Lord God of Israel, which dwelleth between the cherubims, thou art the God, even thou only, and of all the kingdoms of the earth. Thou hast made heaven and earth. Lord, bow down thine ear and hear. Open, Lord, thine eyes and see, and hear the words of Sennacherib, which have sent him to reproach the living God. Of a truth, Lord, the kings of Assyria have destroyed the nations and their lands, and have cast their gods into the fire. For they were no gods, but the work of men's hands, wood and stone. Therefore they have destroyed them. Now therefore, O Lord our God, I beseech thee, save thou us out of his hand, that all the kingdoms of the earth may know that thou art the Lord God, even thou only." So like I said, the Assyrians, they were right there. They were ready to attack. And Hezekiah, he didn't really know what to do. And so while all this is going on, Hezekiah now falls very ill. And now with all this sickness, Isaiah also comes to him and says, "You're going to die from this sickness." So now he's trapped. He's in this situation that he doesn't know what to do. He has no control over it. It's all up to God. And I'm a guy that likes to think methodically. I like to plan things out. I like to figure some stuff out by myself. Hezekiah didn't do that in this place. He turned to God. And that's what we should do every single time. So I have 3 points tonight. My first point is Hezekiah's humble prayer. And in 2 Kings chapter 20, verses 2 through 3 says, "Then he turned his face to the wall and prayed unto the Lord, saying, I beseech thee, O Lord, remember now how I have walked before thee in truth and with a perfect heart, and have done that which is good in thy sight." And Hezekiah wept sore. Hezekiah feared the Lord. He was a God-fearing man, much like his relative David. And when he was brought about, or when Isaiah approached him about this fatal sickness, he's already dealing with the forces of Assyria, and now had to worry about this oncoming death. However, Hezekiah understood this was God's will. Nothing that God does isn't in his will for you. And so he went before God in prayer, sorrowfully, asking for mercy for this healing and for help against the Assyrians. And instead of looking elsewhere, he could have looked for all these doctors and these war strategists to help him and solve all his problems. Instead, he went to God. He humbly went before God and asked for mercy, instead of blaming all these problems on God. And in 2 Chronicles 32, verse 26 says, "Notwithstanding, Hezekiah humbled himself for the pride of his heart, both he and the inhabitants of Jerusalem, so that the wrath of the wrath of Lord came not upon them in the days of Hezekiah." Hezekiah's pride came from the many riches that he often showed off to visiting countries, much like how Solomon was a very wise and he was a rich man. Hezekiah took pride in these possessions that he had, and God was angry with him. And Hezekiah thankfully realized that he can't be doing this. And so he went before God in prayer so that the wrath of God was not on his people, to keep him and his people safe. Number 2, God's merciful response. 2 Kings chapter 20, verse 4 through 7 says, "And it came to pass, after Isaiah was gone out into the middle court, that the word of the Lord came to him, saying, Turn again and tell Hezekiah, the captain of my people, Thus saith the Lord God of David, thy father, I have heard thy prayer. I have seen thy tears. Behold, I will heal thee. On the third day thou shalt go up unto the house of the Lord." And so it states in this chapter, or in this verse, that God hears Hezekiah's prayer. He sees his tears shed. He sees how sorrowful and sorry he is for all he's done. And he realizes, and God understood this, and God was expecting this. God knew that he would ask and fully expected Hezekiah's prayer for healing. Nothing can surprise God. Nothing that we do, nothing that we ask will ever surprise God. He's always there for us, and he will always heal us. He will always give us mercy. That's That's the merciful love he has for us. And verse 6 also says, and I will add unto thy days 15 years, and I will deliver thee and this city out of the hand of the king of Syria, and I will defend this city for mine own sake and for my servant David's sake. Not only did he heal Hezekiah, he gave him extra 15 years to live, to serve God, to be his servant, and he also was going to help them from the leader of Assyria, Sennacherib. Sennacherib would also later die, and they would be saved from their reign. And so, number 3, God's miraculous answer to prayer. 2 Kings 20, verse 7 says, and Isaiah said, take a lump of figs, and they took and laid it on the boil, and he recovered. Verse 8, it says, and Hezekiah said unto Isaiah, what shall be the sign that the Lord will heal me, and that I shall go up in the house of the Lord the third day? Isaiah said, this sign shalt thou have of the Lord, that the Lord will do the thing that he has spoken. Shall the shadow go forward 10 degrees or back 10 degrees? Hezekiah answered, it is a light thing for the shadow to go down 10 degrees. Nay, but let the shadow return backward 10 degrees. Isaiah the prophet cried unto the Lord, and he brought the shadow 10 degrees backward, by which it had gone down in the dial of Ahaz. So we just had that eclipse about a week ago. Imagine something like that happening just so that God can confirm that he was going to heal you and save you. And so, and also says in verse 7 that Isaiah came back and only healed him with just a lump of figs. God can use anything for his will and in his power. And then Hezekiah in these verses asks, what shall be the sign that I am healed? And much like Gideon in the book of Judges often asks for many signs, very specific signs that God would save him, Hezekiah is asking for a very specific sign that for confirmation of his healing. And so in Matthew 16, 1-4, it says, an arrogant demand from God is a sin, but here Hezekiah again only humbly asks for a request from God. There's nothing wrong with that. God asked us to give him requests. He asked for us to pray for him constantly. And so God's miraculous sign was for a shadow cast by the sun to move backwards, specifically 10 degrees backwards. And so in all this that God has done for Hezekiah and this whole story, his ultimate purpose in all of this was to strengthen Hezekiah's faith in him. And this story in the Bible shows the true power of prayer. So in closing, God answers on his own accord. It's in his own ways. We may pray for a friend or loved one to be saved or to be healed from an illness, just like Hezekiah. God may not answer right away. He answers in his own ways. It may be yes, no, maybe wait, or maybe not. But he's a gracious, merciful God, and he will never let us down. And we're undeserving of his love and mercy. Yet it's his mercy that will steer us back when we've gone astray. When we run off, think we don't need him, we will always come back to him, realizing he's the only one we need. He's the only thing we need in life. And he'll always be there when we realize our mistake.